In an interview Macron gave to reporters, he said that if Russia won, the lives of the French would change. They will no longer have security in Europe, and at the same time accused Putin of allegedly failing to fulfill any of his commitments. And he also said Russia poses an existential threat to France. Here, there is an expression attributed to British Prime Minister Benjamin Disraeli. There are lies, there are brazen lies, and there are statistics. In light of what we have been hearing from European and American politicians since about 2008, this expression can already be rephrased in a modern way. There are lies, there are brazen lies, and there are the words of Western politicians. How do the words of Western politicians differ from brazen lies, you ask? And by the fact that their words are not just brazen lies, but brazen lies plus outrageous hypocrisy, plus what they actually do or are going to do, and blame us for it. After all, everything they say about our president's desires, about the actions he is taking, about some aggressiveness and danger of Russia to Europe, is a brazen lie uttered by them with prohibitive hypocrisy. Because you and I are not stupid people, and we remember very well all the steps of goodwill towards the West that we took and all their promises, agreements, and treaties that we broke or unilaterally terminated. It's not us, it's them. Let me remind both our non-twinists and our citizens who still believe in Western propaganda that the Soviet Union first initiated the end of the Cold War and extended a hand of friendship to the West. And after its collapse, Yeltsin did everything to befriend the West. Just like Putin did at the beginning of his first term, so did Yeltsin to please the West. He ruined the entire high-tech industry inherited from the USSR, let Western corporations into the country, let them take over resource extraction by concluding a bondage PSA, as a result of which our budget received virtually no oil and gas revenues, and for a whole decade from 1991 to 2000 unilaterally disarmed our army, reduced our nuclear potential, and showed complete obedience to the United States and Europe to show the West our friendliness and willingness to integrate into their system, as a runaway boy. And when the US and Europe, in response to these steps of goodwill, conducted 3 waves of NATO expansion to the east and advanced their military bases to our doorstep, intending to conduct a 4th wave as well, in order to kick down our front door and subsequently place missiles in the hallway, reducing the time of their flight to Moscow to 2 to 3 minutes and thus be able to deliver a decapitating, non-nuclear strike on Russia from the territory of a neighboring country and without consequences for themselves, we were left with no other option but to bump and never take another step back. Pulling one of the neighboring countries into NATO was an existential threat to our country. And we had no choice but to declare this and try to negotiate with the United States and NATO, which we did in December 2021 by sending them draft agreements on mutual security guarantees. As you can imagine, if the Russian capital were hit by cruise missiles from one of the neighboring countries to the south, the decision to retaliate with a counterstrike towards Europe and the United States would hardly be made by Putin, because our leadership would be at a loss as to how to respond. Well, in case these missiles reached their target, overcoming our missile defense system, Russia would probably be left without political and military leadership, and then there would be no one to make a decision on a retaliatory strike. Which means the West could achieve an easy victory over Russia and dictate its terms to us. So, back to Macron's words, that is a lie told with prohibitive hypocrisy. It should be noted that 2 supposedly independent, supposedly unbiased journalists did not react to these words in any way and did not clarify from Emmanuel Bonaparte exactly what agreement or commitment and how exactly Putin violated it. Why clarify, right? Macron can be embarrassed because none of the ordinary people, not only in the world, but also in the West, don't know what their politicians mean when they talk about Putin's violation. A world order based on some rules that no one has seen, heard, or knows about, and about some obligations that Putin has violated. There is not a single commitment Putin has made to the West. There is not a single agreement. There is not a single treaty he has broken. No, of course, both Western politicians and some of their citizens realize what Putin is guilty of in front of the West. I'll tell you what it is. Our president did not put up with the dictates of the West and decided to destroy the unipolar world in which the West has not changed its rules a bit and remained colonized. A colonizer with the ability to plunder every country in the world. This time, however, through a new colonial policy. Neo-colonial policies differed from those they had pursued in earlier centuries in that they began to use many other methods rather than the army as a tool for plundering other countries. For example, information technology to support submissive and demonize recalcitrant power in other countries.
Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, Bachar al-Assad, Putin, Sidi Pin, etc.
The technology to cultivate the elite under their control in other countries. and keeping it under control in case the technology misfires. The technology of conducting color revolutions with the help of nurturing a hand-wringing opposition, promoting their handmade non-profit organizations in different countries. Well, the most important tools supporting their neo-colonial model are their currencies imposed on the world as world reserve currencies, which the US can print as much as they want without serious consequences for their countries. The SWIFT system of message exchange between financial organizations, the leading role in the IMF, rating agencies, the unified Irkutsk, this is a coordinated sanctions policy that they can unleash on recalcitrant countries and many other smaller but no less effective tools. But they made the mistake of relegating Russia to the role of a colony and thinking that we would accept it. As ridiculous as that sounds, but I repeat that Western politicians cannot say this directly and openly to their citizens and the whole world. That's why they repeat these stupid mantras about aggressive Russia and that Russia is going to attack them, that Russia is violating something. And journalists, also realizing all this, do not ask their politicians uncomfortable clarifying questions in order to preserve the image of the West as a world fighter for good and justice. In the light of democracy, where not robbers from the big road, but decent gentlemen live. When the whole world constantly hears, even if they don't really believe it, that the West is fighting for the ideals of democracy and a just world order, and it is different if their politicians suddenly say that they are fighting Russia in order to preserve the neo-colonial system they have built, which allows them to suck the blood out of countries that are not part of the golden billion, in order to continue to have an inflated standard of living without much effort. And when Russia was forced to rise up to fight the West, destroying their neo-colonial world order along the way, it became an existential threat to both the US and the West, of the West and for France in particular. Because, as our president recently said, that in the Western elites, there is a very strong desire to freeze the status quo, the unjust state of affairs in international affairs. They are used to filling their bellies with human flesh and their pockets with money for centuries. But they have to understand that the vampire ball is ending. And since the United West has decided to strategically defeat us for the umpteenth time in history, we not only have every opportunity to end this vampire ball, but we have a great desire to do so and support our president in every way. Which is what the last election showed.